The Sacrifice. Few movies end as dark as this one. The Wicker Man. Howie travels to the island to investigate the disappearance of a young girl named Rowan Morrison. According to rumors, she was kidnapped by a group of pagans who live in isolation in the region. As the investigation moves forward, Howie notices that something is very wrong with that place, but he still believes he's there to save the girl. Until the truth is revealed in the most brutal way. The whole story was nothing but a trap. He is the real target of the plan. The community needed a human sacrifice to ensure a plentiful harvest, and Howie was the chosen one. The chosen method is terrifying, placing him inside a gigantic wicker sculpture shaped like a man and setting it on fire. The contrast between the flames consuming the structure and the almost cheerful singing of the villagers is disturbing, creating one of the most striking and unsettling images in horror history. The Freezing. In the futuristic timeline of the Friday the 13th franchise, Jason Voorhees is finally captured and placed inside a cryogenic chamber to keep him from continuing his killing spree. Centuries later, in the year 2455, explorers find his frozen body and decide to take him aboard a spaceship. What they don't know is that they've just brought along the worst passenger possible. When Jason wakes up, he starts brutally killing the crew, but the most memorable death comes right at the beginning. He keeps her head submerged in liquid nitrogen until it freezes solid. Then Jason pulls her out and, with one quick move, smashes the skull to pieces against the metal counter. The smile in the fire. After days trapped in a bizarre festival surrounded by mysterious deaths, Danny is finally crowned May Queen. But the prize isn't just flowers and dancing, it's power. Power to decide who will be the final human sacrifice in the Harga cult ritual. Among the options is a villager who volunteered, and Christian, her boyfriend. The same Christian who spent the entire movie being cold, distant, and humiliating toward her, even though she had just gone through a traumatic situation. Without saying a word, Danny makes her choice. That's when the ritual is complete. Christian is placed inside a dead bear, sewn into the carcass, and taken to the wooden temple, along with other bodies to be burned. The heat rises, the flames consume everything, and Danny's expression changes, from shock and tears to a slow, almost serene smile. It's the most disturbing moment of the film, not because of the fire itself, but because we realize Danny is no longer a victim. She found a place, and maybe a new family. The Bed of Blood. Freddy Krueger is one of the most iconic villains in cinema, games, and worse, he can only kill you when you're asleep. In the original A Nightmare on Elm Street, one of young Johnny Depp, everything seems calm and he's lying in bed, listening to music, trying to relax. But Freddy is lurking, waiting for the right moment by boars. In Hannibal, Gary Oldman plays Mason Verger, a man scarred physically and emotionally after becoming one of Hannibal Lecter's victims. Disfigured and driven by revenge, Mason comes up with a cruel plan to feed Lecter to a pack of wild boars. The scheme seemed foolproof until Lecter's cunning came into play. With words sharp as blades, he manipulates Cordell, Mason's personal doctor, who, tired of his boss's abuse and humiliation, decides to take revenge. The attack is quick and brutal. The animals swarm him, and the camera doesn't need to show much for the audience to feel the horror. The sound of flesh tearing and Mason's muffled screams complete the scene. Spider eggs. In the mist, the fear doesn't just come from what you see, but also from what's about to come out. After a mysterious fog engulfs the region, bringing with it indescribable creatures, a group of survivors is trapped inside a supermarket. But the need for medicine forces them to leave, and fate takes them to a nearby pharmacy. Inside, the scene is pure horror. Overturned shelves, thick webs covering everything, and in the corner, a man hanging, completely wrapped in sticky threads. The most grotesque moment happens. The man's chest and face start to twitch, and with a dry crack, dozens of mutant spiders crawl out of him. Through muffled screams, the man is still able to express that he was feeling everything. What a terrible way to die. Man, as someone who's scared of spiders, this scene makes me so anxious to watch. Death by leeches. Even though it was released straight to video, Puppet Master gathered a cult following and kickstarted a horror franchise. In the first movie, we meet Frank, a psychic who ends up facing one of the strangest and most disturbing deaths in cinema. His fellow psychic, Carissa, ties him up in a sensual way, making it all feel like a kinky game, or at least that's what he thinks. But Carissa is kicked by one of the puppets, and who takes over the game is Leech Woman, a puppet that lives up to her name in the worst way possible. She leans over and begins regurgitating live leeches one after another onto Frank's body. Unable to see anything, he thinks it's still Carissa being daring, but the illusion ends when it's already too late. The leeches start sucking his blood, slowly, agonizingly, and we've got to admit, the filmmaker's creativity here is just as bizarre as it is unforgettable. Death by basketball. Among Wes Craven's films, Deadly Friend is one of the least known and definitely didn't reach the success of Scream or A Nightmare on Elm Street. Maybe that's because of absurd scenes like this one. The victim is Elvira Parker, played by the legendary Anne Ramsey. In the movie, she's the grumpy neighbor who holds a grudge against the protagonist and, of course, is about to pay the price for it. The tension begins with the old lady searching her house for an intruder, only to find a basketball lying around. Then she throws it. The ball hits Elvira's head with superhuman strength, and what should have been a simple impact turns into a grotesque explosion of blood. In the end, only a ridiculously bizarre movie could turn such an innocent object into a deadly weapon. And if you think that was already crazy, just wait for our next topic. Sleeping bag kill. The Friday the 13th franchise is known for its creative deaths, but sometimes simplicity is what makes a scene truly unforgettable. After brutally killing Dan, Judy's boyfriend, Jason Voorhees turns his attention to her. What few people know is that originally the scene had 6 brutal strikes, but to avoid the film getting an X rating, it was reduced to just 1. And ironically, that made the moment even more iconic. In fact, there's another similar Jason scene. In Freddy vs. Jason, he simply walks into a house, attacks the guy on the bed, and in the end, he just folds the bed in half. I'll admit, that scene really traumatized me when I was a kid. The Last Dance. Suspiria delivers one of the most brutal and uncomfortable deaths in modern horror, and it happens without a single visible drop of blood at first. After confronting Madame Blanc and the other dancers, Olga decides to leave the company, but when she tries to go, she ends up trapped in a spell. The door shuts by itself and she's left alone in the center of the room. Meanwhile, in another studio, Susie Bennion begins a new rehearsal with Madame Blanc, except every one of Susie's movements is magically transferred to Olga, not as a dance, but as physical punishment. With each spin, jump, or twist from Susie, Olga's body bends in impossible ways. Arms pop out of place, her jaw distorts, and her legs twist around themselves. The sound of bones cracking mixes with heavy breathing and cries of pain. Unable to scream, Olga is tossed around again and again until she has no strength left. This scene became a landmark in modern horror. Choreographed like a macabre dance, executed with impressive practical effects, and capable of making the audience uncomfortable from beginning to end. The murder on the stairs. In High Tension, Alex's father, Daniel, comes downstairs half asleep and opens the door to answer the call, but is met with a brutal blow to the head. Stumbling and barely conscious, Daniel hardly realizes when the intruder grabs his head and forces it between the staircase rails. The killer then scans the room as if choosing the perfect tool for the job. His eyes land on a heavy dresser. He drags it to the stairs and then, without hesitation, shoves it with all his strength against Daniel's skull. It's a quick scene, but the coldness and cruelty leave it burned into your mind. But if you think that was shocking, just wait until you see the next death. The pool. In Final Destination 4, Hunt's death is a perfect example of how death can find you even in the most ordinary moments, like a dip in the pool. It all starts off seemingly harmless. A kid is playing with a water gun and accidentally sprays Hunt's phone. Annoyed, Hunt grabs the toy from the boy and throws it, not realizing that in the process, he accidentally activated the pool's drain system. Meanwhile, a stray golf ball knocks his lucky coin into the pool. Determined to get it back, he dives in, unaware that the pool is starting to drain. Then comes the most shocking moment. Chestburster. In the classic Alien, Ridley Scott gave us one of the most disturbing deaths in horror history. It all begins when Kane, one of the crew members, is attacked by a strange alien creature, the infamous facehugger. It latches onto his face, wraps its tail around his neck, and inserts some kind of tube straight down his throat. The crew tries to remove the parasite, but nothing works. Eventually, the facehugger just detaches, leaving Kane seemingly fine. But that's when the real threat begins. During a relaxed meal, Kane suddenly starts choking, gagging, and writhing in extreme pain. Then, in the most shocking moment, his chest grotesquely expands and a small, terrifying alien bursts out screaming, covered in blood, before quickly scurrying into the shadows of the ship. This sequence, besides being a milestone in horror, is also famous for shocking not just the audience, but even the actors themselves, who didn't know exactly how the scene would play out. Ridley Scott never told them there would be so much blood, just to capture genuine reactions. Veronica Cartwright's scream of terror is 100% real. Seriously, I jumped so hard the first time I saw this scene. Poor Kane. The killer cable. In Ghost Ship, the idea of a ghost ship is taken literally, and right in the opening scene we get one of the movie's most memorable moments. Amid the music and laughter, a mysterious saboteur tampers with a thin steel cable stretched across the deck, and in a split second, the wire snaps free. The result? The cable whips through the ballroom like an invisible blade, slicing everyone in its path as if they were butter. The only immediate survivor is a little girl, too short to be struck by the height of the wire. But the trauma of what she witnesses goes far beyond any physical wound. To this day, horror fans still cite this opening as one of the most brutal ever made. The deadly glass. Back in the 70s, mainstream horror was still relatively light compared to today's standards, at least when it came to graphic violence. And maybe that's exactly why Keith Jennings' death was so shocking. While trying to recover sacred daggers at a construction site, Keith is caught off guard by a bizarre accident. A truck loses control and the impact is immediate and fatal. Today, the effect might look a little over the top, but at the time it was the perfect mix of timing, unexpected violence, and the sudden death of an important character, something that left audiences stunned. The scene is so well crafted that looking back, it almost feels like a prototype for what we'd later see in the Final Destination franchise. And let's be honest, even when you know exactly what's coming, it's impossible not to squirm when that giant sheet of glass starts sliding down. So, which one of these deaths shocked you the most? From the grotesque to the bizarre, each one proves that in horror there are no limits, neither to creativity nor to cruelty. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next list of horror scenes that made cinema history. See you soon!